Hello. Welcome, everyone, to the first ever episode of NTT 20 Questions. This is the brainchild of my great friend and co-host, George Elek, and we're so chuffed with how you guys have bought into it over the last few days, telling us how excited you are to join the stream, and I can see you flooding in as we kick off. So first, it'd be great to hear from you in the comments, first and foremost, because we know our last stream was hit with technical issues. Can you hear me? That would be an excellent start. We're so delighted to be doing this. We hope that it's the first of many. We just can't believe that two blokes like us who absolutely love to give our opinions on football and on the EFL can actually be joined by two people who can tell us what our opinions should be and give us some amazing experiences and insight into football management. So I'm going to be directing, a TV director tonight for the most part. George Elek is going to start proceedings. Over to you, George.
I've even got the presenter's iPad out just to really fulfill that role of presenter. Yeah, it's incredible to be here today, guys, and cannot thank our two guests enough, Paul Cook and Danny Cowley. It's scandalous that they're both currently out of work managers, given what they've done in the game. Of course, Danny taking Lincoln out of non-league and through up into League One, and then a good first championship campaign with Huddersfield. And Paul Cook, I mean, Paul, you managed a fair few, but most recently Wigan, of course, and Portsmouth. And fair to say, what happened at Wigan last season should, unfair on any boss. So brilliant to have you both here. And I say you're both out of work managers at the moment. Danny, you've been doing a bit of coaching this afternoon.
Yeah, this evening I've been coaching Lincoln United under 12s play for the team. So my daughter plays. Yeah, been freezing this evening. So pleased to be back in the warm. But no, I enjoy doing that.
That'll set the rumour mills absolutely flying. Danny Cowley taking charge of the under 12s ladies team at Lincoln. Paul, any youth team coaching for you at the moment?
I'd take any coaching me. I might be down there next to Danny next week on that sideline, seeing if I can get involved in his sessions. It's a tough industry we're in, and gaining jobs now is very, very tough for all managers. So I've actually been out watching my son train tonight. Connor, he's 15. But I must admit, I sat in my car and watched through the front windscreen, if I be truthful.
Brilliant. Yeah, too cold to be outside, I reckon. I mean, what's it like at the moment? Because it's a funny season anyway, and you both came into the campaign, I guess, hoping you'd be in a job fairly soon. It's now December. A few jobs have been and gone. Are you guys feeling optimistic about the prospects going forward?
Go on, Danny, if you want to go first.
Yeah, I think we've enjoyed the time that we've had. It's probably the first time in my life that my life's actually stood still. It's been 24/7 prior to that. So I think we've enjoyed some family time. Certainly enjoyed an opportunity to reflect on the way we work and how we work, and try to find ways of doing things better. So we spent a lot of time between Nikki and I. Nikki and I, believe it or not, live next door to each other. So we've got a bit of a unique relationship. But yeah, so now we've spent a lot of time just looking at our game model, looking at our coaching curriculum, and just looking at ways to hopefully be able to deliver that better. And obviously, when you do get the opportunity, you want to be prepared and hopefully be in a place where you can hit the ground running.
Paul, it must be very difficult for you, because the circumstances that mean that you are currently not managing a football team were off-field issues that you couldn't have foreseen at Wigan, and the job you were doing at Wigan was so special and so impressive. So it must be difficult for you to currently be sitting on the sidelines. Yeah,
I think so. I think, as Danny will probably agree with, I think when you've listened to other managers and they're out to work, and you listen to other people who are going through the experiences of what both Danny and myself are going through, you actually go through a lot of mixed emotions at times, if the truth be known. And within it, the underlying feeling I have, or I try to have, is to just try and be as positive as I can be. I think because the reality after the initial period with your family and stuff like that, as Danny is and Nicky, I know them guys quite well. We're fiercely competitive people, and we've got that missing in our lives at the minute. Even the bad days, even the days when you get beat. I remember we had a drink after we drew 1-1 with Huddersfield this year, with Danny and Nicky after the game. And once the game ends, it's a different period in your week. It's a chance to let all the emotions go from the week and then slowly build up to the next one. So, you know, the emotions that I've had since Wigan, now it's been coming up for 5 months, I think it is. It's been everyone. It's been anger. It's been a tinge of sadness. It's been everything. It's the wanting to get back into football as quickly as possible. But again, as you know, and I'm sure Danny will be agreeing, and we'll be agreeing with each other on a lot of things tonight, I suppose. You do need to go in at the right club now, if that's possible. You know, Danny's had a fantastic experience at Lincoln. I know that. I'm not so sure about his Huddersfield. He can speak about that, obviously. You know, from my time and my experiences at clubs, you know, when you're in the right club, you know that as a manager. You know, and now whether opportunities come quickly or not so quickly, you know, I think both of us will be looking at them to say, is this the club we want to take forward? Not necessarily is the first job that comes along the job that you take.
Paul, I'm hoping that you'll agree on some things, but it'd be great to get some things where you don't necessarily have the same viewpoint, don't have the same opinion. We'll find out over the course of the hour. Now, you mentioned having a drink after your game, the 1-1 draw earlier this year. And what I'd really like to know, just to warm us up a little bit before we get into the really serious stuff, into the nuts and bolts, is I think there are famous cup runs, certainly cup results in both of your careers. And also, if you Google, put it this way, Danny Cowley, Arsene Wenger, you'll see a lovely picture of Danny Cowley and Arsene Wenger shaking hands, almost a hug, if I'm honest. A lot of mutual respect there. If you Google Paul Cook, Pep Guardiola, what you'll see is, I think it's fair to say, a large disagreement between the two of you. It's certainly not what defines you, but it's an amazing image, and I know that it's one that actually deep down you kind of cherish. So, did you have a drink with Pep Guardiola after the game, or is he not really into that?
100%. We never had a drink after the game. No, and it was quite difficult. If I be truthful, you know, I think for all managers, I think the only thing you can put it down to sometimes, I do believe, you know, the foreign managers have a different perspective on post-match than the English managers. And irrespective, normally what the managers are brought up with is whatever goes on during the game, you park that at the end of the game, you go in and you have a drink. And you'll always get managers having different, you know, I've got one or two managers I don't particularly like, not so much get on with, I just don't like them. I'm sure.
Hopefully one of them's got Danny.
No, it's there, Nicky. I don't like funny enough. I've only joking, guys, by the way. No. And sometimes, you know, yourself, if you've just lost, for example, or, you know, the last thing you want to do is do that. But that was very much an English mentality. You know, now the disappointing thing for us, you know, especially after a win like that, you know, it would have been fantastic to enjoy some time in obviously such an esteemed manager's company. You know, that unfortunately wasn't to be. You know, and I don't think that's particularly anybody's fault. Esteemed manager.
Danny, did you have a glass of red with Arsene?
We had a good time with Arsene after the game. Yeah, he was unbelievable, to be fair. The Arsenal Football Club as a whole was just brilliant, and they really added to our experience. And to be fair to Arsene Wenger, they'd had a difficult time because they'd just lost 5-0 to Bayern Munich in midweek. And we went there. He was, at the time, Arsene was getting some real criticism from the media. But yet, he still gave us maybe an hour after the game. And I remember me and Nicky went in there and we just had like, I was like Chris Tarrant, just question after question after question. I remember at one stage, he got these yogurt pots out and I thought, oh, wow, he's gonna tell me football now. He's gonna tell me all of his secrets. And he got these yogurts out and he just started to eat them. And I thought, all out. Just some words of wisdom. But I remember me and
I love it.
We had well over an hour with him, and I remember after we hadn't thought about anything other than the game and then going to see Arsene Wenger. And I come out after, and the coach had already gone home. So me and Nicky ended up just played at the Emirates in front of 62,000 people, and we ended up just walking to the station and we were getting a train back to the hotel. But yeah, that's how that experience ended. But he was he was so good with us, brilliant. And we spoke about, it was really interesting actually, spoke about team selection and when he selects his team. We spoke about the training weeks and what his week looked like. And it's amazing that you're living at different ends of we were a non-league team at the time. He was a top Premier League manager, and so many things that we experienced during the week were so similar. So it was great. And the one thing that really stood out for me with Arsene Wenger was his love for the game. Like I said, he'd had a real difficult week, but his passion and love for the game was incredible.
Pity for Lou with Arsene Wenger. That's a content idea, if not the top 20 in the future, I reckon. We're 10 minutes in and we haven't even got to your questions yet. We've had loads of questions sent in from people. Also, if you're watching live and you want to ping in a question, do send it through. Kind of on the topic, going back to the fact that you guys are currently, not in a job. Ollie asks, how do you go about things when you're out of the game? Do you study individual teams? Do you keep track of teams tactically? Do you keep an individual log of players? Danny, you and I spoke about this the other day at Quest, so I'll come to you first. I know that you and your brother have certainly, you don't drop the ball when it comes to staying on top of all things EFL, do you?
No, I think for us, it's just to try to get a routine. Obviously, it's the first time I've ever been out of work since I left university, and obviously spent 15 years as a teacher and played part-time and then managed part-time and then went into full-time football management. So just for me to get up, have a routine to my day is really important. And we've spent some time going through our sort of trying to get our coaching curriculum and relate it to our game model. And we have hundreds of drills that we're trying to animate and get to a place which just hopefully will help with our delivery and when we get back into work, but also spending some time looking at players and spending a lot of time in that sort of 18 to 21 category. Obviously, you look at the salary caps, which have already come in at League One and League Two. It looks like the salary cap that's going to come in at the Championship as well. The 18 to 21 age range doesn't come within that category, so you straight away know that that's an age range where you need to make sure that you're on top of, and you know where the best young players are and where they're coming from. And so spent some good time doing that, and just studying football really. We're in the process of doing our pro license, which is something that we're really enjoying, and that's a great opportunity again to meet people that are in sort of similar positions to what Paul and I are in. And we love football, and we're students of the game and we love the game. So we just keep trying to add and keep trying to develop and evolve.
Paul, is it a similar story for you?
Oh yeah, just absolutely spot on. I think it's no different sometimes than like when you talk to young players, and young lads nowadays. And Danny's obviously done really, really well with developing his teams, individually and then collectively. And one of my favourite things that I say to players, as lads, if you don't make the training ground your best place to be, and you work hard at your game and you touch a ball and you practice and you're in the gym and you give football your life, but when you come out of coaching and managing, it's the same. Like if me and Danny are like having a week off and another week off and another week off, and you don't actually love football as much as you think you do. We actually, you've got to spend your week, whatever normally it is football related. There's that much football on the telly, especially with lockdown. It's been fantastic because you can actually watch a lot of football at all different levels, which is great. The actual, as Danny's touched on there, the pro licenses and stuff like that, they're so educational, because no matter what you think, and people, we all sit in rooms together, none of us know everything about football. None of us do. There's no magic. There's no science that you go, if you do this tomorrow, everything in the world will be right. One of the biggest aspects I find about football is actually managing footballers. If you can manage them, because they're actually people. And what I've found, the higher up you seem to climb, sometimes the people just aren't quite as nice as they were when you come from a little bit lower. They're a lot more humble at lower levels. They're a lot more wanting to learn. They look at you and actually listen to you and pay attention. And sometimes, so Danny's had his own experience, you get one or two who actually look at you and think to yourself, what are you asking me to do? I'm asking you to be a professional footballer. I'm asking you to give me your life. I'm actually asking you to train hard. I'm asking you to join a team and have a work ethic for your team. Nowadays we all speak the famous one in football, in possession and out of possession. Well, I know when I played, I loved playing when we had the ball. I wasn't particularly good when we didn't. And it's educational, and you've got to make sure, even from my point of view, no different than Danny's, we just love, we love football, don't we? So it doesn't matter who we're watching or where we're going. Danny's been out coaching the girls tonight. What a fantastic thing that is. He don't do that to be clever or to get publicity. He's been doing that since forever. And they're things because, if you didn't love doing that, you'd be sitting in the house cozy with your Sky telly on watching the thing. So basically hoping, keeping as fresh as we can, to hopefully get back in as soon as we can.
It's definitely the one big blind spot. I mean, not the only one, but probably the biggest blind spot for people like George and I and others who either haven't played the game or, as there are many of them, former pundits who talk about the game in the media, but who aren't involved within clubs, who aren't looking people in the whites of the eyes, is that human aspect. And, we think we put a lot of work into our research and a lot of work into our analysis to try and make up for the fact that we haven't had a playing career and we haven't done our badges, and we try our best, but it's that human element that you can never truly know from outside. And that's why it's so interesting to talk to you guys, because, certainly from a fan's perspective as well, you can just never truly know. There's always rumors about characters, good characters, bad apples, etc. And yet, you still see the team sheet coming out on a Saturday, and there's always, why isn't X in the team? Why is X in the team? And you just think to yourself, well, there's been 6 days since the last game where these people have been in training within a club, working together, communicating well or not, as the case may be. And that's got to have a big impact on things like team selection. And that's the sort of thing that we miss so much. Just on your current situations, or your current situation for both of you, there's a lot of interest for me and George, and I know a lot of the listeners as well, about applying for jobs and job interviews, because things like Football Manager, the game, have made us think that, and I think it's quite prevalent in the media as well, that you submit an application or you express your interest in a job, through an email or something, attach your CV, and then maybe you get invited to a round of interviews. And I just wonder, from your experiences, either now or previously, whether that's really the case, or maybe, Paul, you could start as someone who's had a slightly longer career, how it tends to work, or is there no one way that it does work in terms of applying for jobs, or dare I say it, getting jobs when you're out of work?
This was going really well till you started asking these type of questions to me and Danny. All of a sudden, it's not working so much now.
We gave you 15 minutes. We gave you 15 minutes of the softball. We made it easy for you for the first 10, but now we're pressing. We're pressing high.
There's a walk down memory lane for the last 10, so you can look forward to that.
It was a lovely 15 minutes there. A nice cup of tea off my son. Listen, one of the things with football that we can't stop, you can't stop football progressing. And football's moving forward at a rate of knots now. And sometimes in the modern day game, it's moving at a rate of knots that's not just necessarily concurrent for a football manager. They're now in the modern day game, we're talking about head coaches, and all of a sudden then there's a sporting director, so the actual dynamics of football's changing as football's evolving. I must admit, guys, I'm very much into the fact of, I believe that clubs should come looking for you. That's my honest opinion. I don't really think it's great for managers to apply for jobs, albeit now we all understand, and Danny will probably be the same, we all understand the rules of what goes on in and around football clubs. I'm not necessarily a great believer in that, and I don't think it's correct. I know from my time that I can only speak about the clubs that I've been at Chesterfield, at Portsmouth and at Wigan, I haven't applied for the jobs. And going forward, I'm not saying I won't be applying for jobs, because in the modern day game, I'm sure that if you don't apply for the job, you mightn't get looked at because people think you don't want it. But I think, your CV, I think what you've done in the game, I think that people should come and ask to speak to you and have a general chat about the job rather than you've applied and you go for it. So that's just a little brief sort of thing of where I'd be with it all.
And Danny, I guess, because every manager has had a different pathway in the game, and you guys have come into the game in a slightly different route and at slightly different times as well. What have your experiences been like over? I mean, we're really only talking the last 5 years because of the job that you did with Concord Rangers, with Braintree, and then with Lincoln, really sort of catapulting you into the conversation when it surrounds managers in the EFL and at the top of the game.
Yeah, I think obviously I've managed now for 13 years, but like you alluded to, the first maybe 9-10 years went pretty unnoticed, which was nice because it gave me a really good opportunity to kind of get experience, refine my skills, and find my way of working. Pretty much like Paul, I think you do a good job, and as a consequence of your team doing well, you then start to get recognised, and your profile raises as a consequence of that, and then you start to get phone calls. We're obviously at a stage now where we're out of work, and this is the first time that we've been out of work. I think when you go to interview, I think you've got a responsibility to the club that you're going to have done the background work. So in terms of, we always, when we go to an interview, we'd have a presentation which would have watched the team at least 10 times. I think you've got to have a really good understanding of what you're going into. One, you've got to protect yourself, and you've got to make sure that you know what you're going into. And two, you owe it to the club as well that you're going into to know that you've got an awareness of where they're at. Then you kind of, through the interview process, gain an understanding of where they want to go and their vision. And then you start to work out whether you feel that you can achieve the objectives that they're setting. And I think, through the interview process, the aim is always to explain your way of working, how you work, also to explain how you want to play and what the game model is. Let's be honest, for all of us as managers, it's pretty much the same. You identify players, you've then got to recruit players, you've then got to develop players. And if you can do those three things well, then normally you find that your teams have success. But what's really important, I think Paul's already alluded to it, is that you've got to be a good fit, and it works both ways. Human relationships are always two ways, and certainly where we've enjoyed success, we've always gone to clubs where we've been a good fit for each other, and certainly at Concord Rangers, we had 8 years there. We grew together, and probably the same at Lincoln as well, which was brilliant, and we had some real fun times doing so. But certainly in that initial process, to have as much detail as you can about the club that you're going into is really important, because they're big decisions. They're big decisions for your life and for your family's life, but they're also big decisions for the football club. So to do the necessary due diligence, I think, is crucial for everybody involved.
It's interesting to hear you say that, Danny, because a couple of years ago when we interviewed Michael Appleton, who of course succeeded you at Lincoln, I said to him then, he'd just left Leicester, and I said, where are you looking to manage? And he said, I don't really care what level the club is, whether it's a Championship club or a League Two club. All I really care about is the owner, and it being a club where I can progress, where I'll be supported, which I guess is exactly what you're saying in terms of the club has to be the right fit, more importantly than anything else.
Absolutely, yeah. It's always the people that you're working for, and Michael Appleton has picked a brilliant club in Lincoln because he's done a fantastic job there. But he's very well supported by a really intelligent board and a fantastic fan base. And it's no surprise to me that they've gone from strength to strength. And we're still living in Lincoln, and my kids are Lincoln City supporters, so we're hoping that they stay at the right end of the table for the rest of the season.
Paul, it's a shame that Lincolnshire's in Tier 3, because otherwise I was going to say, because I'm up there in a couple of weeks, Danny, we could have had a pint, but sadly not.
Yeah, well, I'm pleased to go with Tier 3 then.
Paul, I'm interested to pick up on that line about picking the owner. You hear it quite a lot, and it makes complete sense in any job, whether it's in football or not. You would want to work with people, and specifically, I suppose, for people or under people who are your bosses, who you think are fair and who you think are giving you the best chance to succeed. But in a footballing sense, we know that is, I mean, it's just such a crazy industry when it comes to this, and you just can't guarantee that, can you? I wonder, I'm sure everyone watching pretty much understands what happened and knows what happens at Wigan to you last season, essentially completely out of the blue. How much has that made you change the way you might look for your next job in this exact sense, in terms of, essentially doing your own like due diligence on an owner that you'd be working for?
Yeah, you've got to be careful that you don't come across, or say from your perspective. I'm not trying to sound arrogant, or a lot of these jobs. I'm sure I was managing in Ireland a period of time ago. When Danny was managing Concord Rangers, I'm sure we'd go home after the games then, and our biggest thing was to be the best manager you can be, but be the best person you can be along the way as well. Within that, you want to go to the highest you can be. I'd love to think one day I could manage in the Premier League. I'm sure Danny, along with Nicky, would think the same. So you're not going to be in a position where let's say, for example, we're talking about Watford at top, Bournemouth at top, Norwich at top. We're not going to manage them tomorrow. If they come along, you jump on that ship. Of course you would. So we're not in a position where we say, well, you're going to look at every club, because one of the problems for managers now, in general, if you take an example of a club, I don't know, if we talk about a random club in the league, if we said Portsmouth, for example, if something happened at Portsmouth, you can guarantee there'd be 100 managers looking for that job, 100 at least. So the reality is, we're not really in a position to probably be able to say to pick and choose, albeit you'll find that the success you've had has been coming around when you've had them strong relationships. Now, if you can get them strong relationships at your next club, then the reality is it could lead that you'll be happy and hopefully successful. But if you look at some of the clubs around now, and especially in the Championship, you look at some of the managerial sackings they've had, and they're not all bad managers, are they? That's for sure. But you'll never hear a club say we're a bad football club. But I actually think some of them are that badly run that the managers just carried the brunt of the pain. They just sack the manager. It's amazing football, because a club will just sack one person. And you look at some of the top Championship clubs, they employ 200 people. But we now have recruitment rooms. We have 1 million people in the club, but the manager gets sacked. And I'd love to see one day a sporting director get sacked, mate. I'd love to see a chief exec get sacked now and again. I'd genuinely love to see someone where they go, hang on a minute, this fella, the manager, we just go out there, and normally it's about 5:15 on a Saturday, and we just carry everything for everyone at the club. And I think to myself sometimes, I'd love to throw a few people under the bus now and again. By the way, lad, I'm not at that stage yet, but another couple of months out of work, and I will be. And I find sometimes maybe, I can't speak for Danny and Nicky. I've always enjoyed having a lot of authority at my clubs as I've grew. I've always enjoyed that, because I like my future to be in my hands. I like the decision on my future and my immediate staff, by the way. I've got a lot of immediate staff that I've worked with for a few years. I like my future to be in our hands. I like, if we're going to make mistakes, that we'll make the mistakes. I don't like it to be with recruitment departments and sporting directors and somebody else who has an opinion on the team. Because normally these people's opinions grow on a Saturday at about 5 o'clock when you've just lost the game. And like I always say, it'd be great for you to come in at 10 to 3 and tell me that, because I'll change the team.
Danny, I was hoping you could...
I'll give you loads to talk about.
No, and it's actually really, I don't know whether I'm speaking out of turn here, but what's interesting to me here for you, Danny, is that a lot of young managers or newer managers in the EFL, they sometimes get pigeonholed into a certain type of manager who's progressive and modern and all those words that you use. And quite often there's an assumption that they are happy to work in this progressive and modern structure with a sporting director, for example, where maybe you don't have control of recruitment and perhaps maybe much less authority than what we would call a manager would have had, certainly in the old English sense of the term. And there have been murmurs that for yourselves being yourself, Danny, and your brother Nicky, that actually you are quite keen to have sort of a fair amount of authority if you are to be at the helm of a football club. So I'm really interested in your thoughts on this. You know, it's essentially the head coach versus manager debate, because I think now we know what it means when someone is appointed head coach and maybe what they won't be doing, quite pointedly, and what it means when someone is appointed manager. And it feels like maybe they have a little bit more of the run of the place.
Yeah, I think there's a perception, isn't there, that I don't want to work with a director of football or a sporting director, which is actually untrue. I'm happy to work with a head of football, director of football, sporting director, call them what you want, as long as they're good. And I've experienced some good ones and some not so good ones. But certainly when I was at Lincoln, we actually appointed, it was actually my appointment to bring in Jez George from Cambridge. And he's been unbelievable at Lincoln. And obviously Michael Appleton, and rightly so, will be taking a lot of the credit. But some of the work Jez has done behind the scenes in terms of recruitment, the work he's done with the academy has been brilliant. And what we'd realised at Lincoln is that when you're a football manager, you end up becoming very operational, because you're playing Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, a 46-game season, and of course you're interested in the strategy of the club and you want to drive the strategy of the club forward. But sometimes you're so scared of taking your eye off the ball and looking at the strategy that you need support around you to do that. And what you need to try to do, you need to try, as a manager, you need a sporting director that's aligned with you and thinks the way that you do. And the best clubs, let's be honest, have a clear vision. They have a clear vision of where they're going. They've got a clear understanding of where they're at. They've got a clear vision of where they're going. They have a strategy that is and stepping stones that is going to allow them to get to where they want to go. And then all they then need to do, once they've got that real clarity, is appoint a manager that fits into that way of working. And then when you get that, then you get success. But unfortunately, we find a lot of clubs that are chasing the outcome and forget about the process. And this can, you particularly see it in the Championship. I think everybody is chasing the Premier League dream, and they get so outcome oriented that they forget about the actual process. And what you need to do, you need to try to get a clear process. Then you need to find the people, i.e. the head coach or the manager, whatever the title is, that can deliver that project. And when you get that alignment, then you normally see success. But unfortunately, you don't always get that joined up thinking, and that's when it becomes a problem. Because, like Paul alluded to earlier, in football as a manager, you're making decisions in the here and now. There's a lot of people around you that have hindsight on their side. And listen, if I had hindsight on my side, I'd like to think I could rule the world. But unfortunately, we don't have, and we have to live in the here and now.
It's interesting to hear you talk about. Yeah.
I think Danny just touched on it absolutely fantastically well there. The relationship between head coach and sport director has to be the strongest relationship at the football club. And what you find sometimes, it's when two people are not aligned with each other and come together, it can't work. It just can't work. Now, in the modern game, a manager stroke head coach, he needs all aspects of the club supporting him for the benefit of the football club. So the actual, the principle of the sporting director, of the head coach, manager, whatever you want to call it, it will work, and it'll work fantastically well, because Championship clubs are big clubs going into the Premier League, the massive operations, our recruitment. But then relationships have got to be absolutely strong, so tight it's untrue. If you're really looking at it, a manager used to have that relationship with his chairman. If you understand where I'm going, that was that relationship. Now all of a sudden, in the modern day game, it has to be between head coach and sporting director. And if they're not aligned on philosophy and strategy and style of play, and a lot's made of stuff like that, the brutal truth of it, people just want to win football matches. If you win football matches, everybody will be aligned.
It's one of the issues there. Sorry, George, you go.
No, I was just going to say, that is, you talk about winning football matches, and we've spoken here in kind of depth. We could probably speak for hours about the way the football club should be run. But at the end of the day, your main job as manager or head coach or whatever it is to coach the football team and put them out and win games of football. And we've been sent a couple of questions from guys here, Andy and Jay, which kind of are more about your footballing philosophies rather than the kind of way that you think football clubs should be run and the general strategy, but still the process itself. And it's something that, Ali and I have obviously interviewed a fair few managers now, and finding out the process behind what drives managers is always really interesting. So Andy asks, what weighting do you each give to preparing your teams for your opponent in the lead up to the match? And does it differ match by match? And Jay Sosick, who is also a Lincoln resident, Danny, and also works in football and is a pretty sharp cookie, he asks, how do you balance the ability to implement a style of play on your team whilst ensuring that it gets consistent results? So I guess the questions are kind of both asking, how much do you focus on your own philosophy and what you want to do on the pitch, and how much do you have to be steered by other factors?
Well, I think you have to have a clear way of playing. So you have to have a game model that you believe in and that you work to, and principles that you live and die by. And for us, I like transitional football. I like fast attacking football. I like the players to think forward, run forward, play forward. And we like against the ball. We like high intensity and high pressure football. We want to win the ball back as early as we can. I think when you take a job, the first thing you have to realise, you're in a race. And there's been times in my career where I've had the Ferrari in the race, and at Lincoln in the National League, we were the Ferrari in the race. We could each week we could run our game model, and we had too much power, too much quality for the opponent. So we didn't really have to adapt to anyone at that level. There's been other times in my career where I don't want to say I was the Skoda, but I definitely wasn't the Ferrari. And then you have to adapt accordingly, don't you? And I think you don't want to. You never come away from your principles, but there are some times where you might have to collapse your pressing and introduce a confrontation line and press from slightly deeper. There are other times where you have to make small tweaks because you're playing against an opponent that has better players than you, with better players with better toolboxes. So there is always a time to be pragmatic. There's many ways, isn't there? I find it really interesting at the moment. You look at Mourinho, probably the most pragmatic coach that there is, will literally find the best way of playing for the players that he is available. He has an unbelievable ability to look what he's done throughout his career. He picks the best players in his team, and he finds the best way of playing for those players. You go back, Lampard and Drogba, his Chelsea team, found the best way of playing for those players. Now at Tottenham, he's finding the best way of playing for Harry Kane and Son, and he's a master at doing that. And at the moment, it's working for him. Then you get the other type of manager, the Marcelo Bielsa, who has a really strong game model and won't change for anyone. And look at the success that has brought him. So there's no right or wrong way. I really enjoy seeing people coach and manage in different ways. For us, we have a clear way that we want to play. But again, like at Huddersfield, for example, we took over the team in mid-September. It's hard to implement your style. You can't go from one thing to the other without time on the grass. It takes time. And when you're in a championship season and the games are coming thick and fast, you have to layer it and work towards it gradually. And certainly you have to also be aware of the players that you have at your disposal. And because let's be honest, as coaches, our responsibility is to try to find a way of playing that sets the players up to have success. So it doesn't matter what my ideals are. It doesn't matter what I like. Absolutely, that's what we would like to get to eventually. But we all know in football, you've got to firstly win some football matches to give yourself the time to make it to your ideal and the way you would like to play eventually. And this is always the challenge for the manager.
Paul, when I think of a Paul Cook side, and there have been some smashing Paul Cook sides over the years with Chesterfield, Pompey and Wigan, I personally think of attacking wingers playing fairly high up the pitch. And I think of a number 10 as well. And, you know, you've had some star men over the years at all levels playing in what I would think is kind of a number 10 role. Even back thinking of Jay O'Shea at Chesterfield and Gary Roberts as well, who you've worked with so much, not just a number 10. He can obviously play in a number of different positions. But is it fair to say that attacking wingers and number 10 are these Paul Cook sort of non-negotiables, or would you not say that?
Listen, I think Danny summarised absolutely perfectly there. I think, you know, you'd have a style of play. Don't you remember quite a little story we were playing? We were playing for someone for Chesterfield, and anyway, a good friend of mine, Tony Ellis, was working for Rochdale at the time, and he was coming to watch the game. So he phoned me on the way. So we got him in for a cup of tea before the game. And obviously, Rochdale at the time were trying to be promoted with us. So he's sitting in our little office, and I can see him looking up at the boards, you know, with our team up there. And I said, Tony, why don't you just ask me our team we're playing for? Danny will tell you, 4-2-3-1. The both fullbacks are gone. You don't even have to watch us tonight. You don't have to do a report. You just won't take it to Keith and tell him. And from there, you know, I've genuinely found, and you learn and curve as you go, it's all about players, guys. It's all about players. It's all about adapting. If you look, for example, 2 great examples this year, Danny touched on Bielsa at Leeds. The 3 teams that went up last year, West Brom, Fulham and Leeds. Leeds have continued playing exactly how Leeds do. Doesn't matter whether they're playing at Anfield, Old Trafford, Chelsea, that's Bielsa. But you look at Fulham and West Brom, they've gone from last year where they take all in front of them to this year now where they can go 10 games without a win. The managers haven't changed. Yet the managers nowadays, you know, we hear stuff about, you know, Slaven Bilic under pressure, and you think, how Slaven Bilic under pressure? So unfortunately for Slaven, his team now last year was very strong. He's in a league now where your team's not so strong. But modern day football means we just sack managers. You know, so having styles of play, I think in football in general, lads, I think there's so many players on a pitch you can defend, and there's so many attack. If you look at the modern day game with Man City, for example, being the big one, and Liverpool, they defend with 3 players. They defend with 2 centre-halves and a number 4. And everybody else, I'll tell you, they're in your penalty box, mate, all over you. Now, as Daniel said, I've had teams where we've defended with 11 and deep as well. And that's football. You know, yeah. It's no different than, you know, when you're in the ascendancy, it's great to be the bully, and that's the wrong word totally. It's great to be the dominant force. When good teams put manners on you quite quickly, and you can't be aggressive with your pressing and stuff like that. So it's very much adapting to what you've got, you know, but you've got to win, haven't you, I think, for all teams. And just to pick up on Danny's point there, by the way, for managers going in, I always find them 6 weeks that you have pre-season is when you build everything at your football club. It's the best time. You can nick away for a few days, take lads out and have a social beer. You can have your team meetings about discipline and what's expected. You don't want people late for training. You should not be late for training. You shouldn't be late for work. It's your workplace. And you get all that out. You go through your pattern of play, your strategies on the pitch, your nucleus of how you want to perform. So that when you go on a pitch on a Saturday, everyone knows their job to the letter. If you're taking over mid-season and you're getting a job on a Wednesday and they've just been beat Tuesday, you come in Thursdays off, you're just going out and playing football. So the actual managers who go into jobs, probably as me and Danny are looking to do at the minute, it's so difficult because you're inheriting so many headaches and problems, but you've got to adapt to it quickly.
Yeah, I mean, what you were saying earlier about managers being sacked too early, I tweeted something in defence of Chris Wilder last weekend, and believe it or not, I even had a couple of Sheffield United fans telling me that they thought his time at the club is up, and you know that is absolutely ridiculous. I think we can all agree, given everything he's done for them, and I should say it is definitely a vocal minority rather than most Blades. We've got about 15 minutes left.
Yeah, could I just make a point there? And it's a really good point that you brought up. You know, Chris Wilder has given Sheffield United the last 3 or 4 years of absolutely unbelievable football. And if you look at Norwich, for example, who sit top of the Championship today, they kept faith with Daniel Farke because he took them to be promoted. If you look at Rotherham in the Championship today, when they were relegated 2 years ago, Paul Warne then brought them back up. The problem with these teams is not the managers, it's the level of player within the football club. Unfortunately for supporters, they don't want to admit that. And if for example, Sheffield United fans are speaking about Crystal Wilder like that, it just shows how sad football is today. That a Sheffield lad and a manager can do as much as he's done for Sheffield United, yet their own fans wouldn't allow them to be relegated and for Chris to bring them back up again if Chris wanted to do that.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly fans, I think, who I mean, the majority, I'm sure, who would want him to stay. And it's also, I always think, worth remembering as well that teams have to go down. Somebody has to finish in the bottom three. And for example, if you take Wickham or even Coventry this season, I would argue that Gareth Ainsworth and Mark Robbins could feasibly do a good job at their clubs and get relegated. Because, you know, if you look at the budgets and what they've got at their disposal, that is fair. Somebody has to get relegated. We've got to carry on, though. We can talk about this later on. 15 minutes to go, and we need to leave some time at the end as well for some questions. So do write your questions beneath. But it's time to look back at former successes. And, you know, if we carry on doing these, there might be a couple of awkward ones where we're talking to out-of-work managers who haven't had much success. But luckily with you two, we've got plenty to talk about. And Danny, coming to you first, we've had a couple of questions. Firstly, of all the highs we shared, this sadly isn't me saying we, but it's a Lincoln fan, during yours and Nicky's tenure at Central Bank, which moment takes the biscuit?
We had some good times. I would say, I think getting promoted from the National League to League Two, I just knew how important that was for the club and for the people at the club and also the supporters. So, yeah, we beat Macclesfield with maybe 3 games to go, but it was a good feeling, yeah. And obviously for Nicky and I, it kind of felt like we'd completed non-league. It'd been our 4th promotion at non-league. Yeah, it was. We knew that to get to the Football League, we'd have to earn it, and I was really proud of that group and proud for all the people, because it literally wasn't about a manager or 2 managers and a group of players. The supporters have been just phenomenal that year, and had earned so many points both at Central Bank and away from home. So it felt like a real collective effort. So to win the game at home and to do it in front of our supporters and for everybody to enjoy the celebrations will live long in my memory.
Paul, one for you about your time at Portsmouth. Pompey's promotion came after a dressing room bust-up between Doyle and Burgess, fans booing players off the pitch, Carl Naismith becoming top scorer just months after training with the kids. I guess this is back to what you were saying earlier about managing players. And the question is, how did you manage those difficult situations, and how did that culminate in you guys getting promoted?
First of all, on Carl Naismith, Carl spent 2 months on loan at Hartlepool. And again, we're going back to allowing managers to manage. Carl Naismith is a really good lad. He's a nice lad. He's a really good boy. He's played at me now. He's played with me for 3 football clubs. But that was part of Carl's education. And it's not all about Carl Naismith. It's about the team. It's about everything else. So whenever Carl was out of my teams, it was purely that me and Carl were getting to that point where, as Danny will tell you about whatever team, whatever promotion, when you trust someone, it's a fantastic way to be with a footballer. It doesn't mean they play well. It doesn't mean that the world's a great place. It just means you trust them. And it's a lovely place to be. And with Cal at that moment in time, our relationship wasn't like that. When I left Wigan at the end, or I resigned, mine and Cal's relationship was rock solid and the trust was there. I've been through stuff. So certainly with Cal, it was always a case of when he played for me. But we had to go through, as you could imagine, getting sent to Hartlepool was a little bit tough for him, I suppose, from Portsmouth. But it was just part of his development and his mindset. He was always going to come back to play. With Mike Doyle and it was Christian Burgess. It was half-time versus Stevenage at home, I think it was. And we were in the midst of a promotion push that at Portsmouth was very high pressurised because of the fans' demands to be promoted. The club wanted to get back to the Championship minimum. And as you can imagine, we had David Ford in goal, an ex-Millwall player, not a Republic of Ireland international, Michael Doyle, Christian Burgess. In dressing rooms, you've got to allow characters and you've got to allow people to breathe. And there was just a couple of words exchanged and a quick something went on within the dressing room that as a manager, I had to deal with. And I dealt with it by taking both players off, and we went out and we lost the game. We lost the game 1-0. It was a really tough day for us all at the club because Michael Doyle was my captain and he was an outstanding captain. Kristen Burgess was my centre-half and he was an outstanding centre-half. So the brutal reality was the team was the loser on the day, but the team became the winner with what went on after it. So that was a really good moment for Portsmouth Football Club because that moment brought the players tighter together, that the pressure from what they were feeling come out at half-time. You can't let pressure take over your performances. Your mindset has to be to deliver on the pitch. And that was a great moment for us to, in terms of a real troublesome moment, become a real, focal point for our going on to better things.
Danny, one for you quickly now on Huddersfield. How do you reflect on your time at Huddersfield? Is there anything you could have done differently? And do you feel you were unfairly treated?
We enjoyed it. I thought it was a brilliant challenge. I kind of always run towards expectation. That's always what I try to do. I always think the bigger the challenge, the more the learning. And certainly, that 10 months was a brilliant learning experience for Nicky and I. Met some great people. We're pleased with the job that we did. We picked the club up. We only had 1 point after 9 games. So to get safe after 45 games was an achievement, we felt. There's always things that you would do differently. There's no doubt about that. Even in my most successful teams, football is it's a roller coaster. It's an impulsive game. You're making very quick decisions. You don't get them all right, for sure. So there's always things that you would with hindsight you maybe would do differently. But I was proud of the group from the position they were in and where they were at, particularly mentally when we come in to turn that around. We were proud of everybody that pulled together to achieve that. Did I think I was treated unfairly? This is football. If you're looking for fairness, you're probably looking in the wrong place. So I'll leave that for other people to decide. But I think what we always try to do, and Paul certainly had done this throughout his career, is when you take a job, you try to leave it in a better place than you found it. And I believe that we have done. And Carlos Corberian has gone in now and done a really good job thus far this season. And for me, it's always to get better, not to get bitter.
Last one then for Paul, and I think this shows the high esteem you're still held in at Wigan. This is from a Wigan fan. For Cookie, if Wigan hadn't gone into administration and that squad had stayed together with the odd addition, how many points clear at the top of the championship would you be?
10. Just 10. Norwich, Bournemouth, and then Wales. Again, it's quite funny because it's no different than we signed a lot of players in the summer. Jamal Lowe, Kiefer Moore, Joe Williams, Anthony Robinson. We'd had a lot of change at the club, and Cedric Kipre was centre half, and it was working with these players. It was repetition of work. It was not just myself. It was Anthony Barry, the first team coach, Liam Richardson, Nick Colgan, the governor. We had the worst trips home you can imagine, lads. We could get beat at 5-5 every Saturday for a period of time. We were giving goals away 6 minutes into stoppage time. But football's about making mistakes. It's what you do about the mistakes. You can't keep making them. And them lads grew and grew. So by the time we come to the second half of the season, we were genuinely not a good. When I say we were a good team, we were a good functioning team. That everyone knew the jobs, everyone done their bit, and we worked really hard together. Kiefer Moore as well, another lad from Barnsley, was leading the line, and we were a really good team. They gelled well together. Unfortunately, no one will ever know what we could have achieved or not achieved. I think the experiences the lads were gaining going along, the confidence we were getting from some of the results, and some of the wins, especially the second half of the season, where we won away at West Brom and played really well on the day. But that's in the past now, and I think the future for Wigan Athletic is certainly the most important thing. Just having a club is so important. You've seen Danny and Nicky at Lincoln. Any club can go from where they think's a bad place to a really good place. If you'd have gone to Sincil Bank pre-promotions, there'd probably be about 2,000 people there, 2,500. You go there now, you don't get a ticket. And every club's got to believe that the future is going to be better. And I certainly hope for Wigan Athletic that they can return to where they belong one day.
Okay, well, we've had some fantastic questions in the comments, and we've just got 5 or 10 minutes left. So I'm going to pick out a couple for you guys to answer. Some of them have kind of been answered already in the duration of the chat so far. So to Hunter Lionheart and to Michael Hart especially, your questions about stability at clubs and how that factors into a job choice and the importance of the tactical side of management compared to how we, the fans, think how important it is. Those have more or less been answered already. So I'm going to pick some original questions. And one for you, firstly, Paul, from Joseph, who says he's a Pompey fan and he's curious what you spotted or what potential you saw in Adam Webster early on. And if you're surprised at how far he's come and how much he's developed as a player. We love any EFL graduates into the Premier League. We love to see them doing well. And Webster's had the most amazing few years, Paul.
Yeah, Adam, again, the first thing when you speak about Adam Webster, you're talking about one of the best young men you'll ever meet in your life. Absolutely superstar of a boy who just wanted to learn and get better and train and run and be in the gym. When we first went into Portsmouth, he was very much like a baby giraffe, if you can understand what I mean. His body wasn't really aligned. I remember we played Wickham away and Akinfenwa didn't give him the best afternoon this day. And he was just a young 18-year-old kid. And like I told Adam, I think these are the best educations of your life now. You're learning on the job. And he was always going to be a top player. He had that, Danny spoke about Ferrari. Adam was a Rolls Royce even in League Two. He could carry the ball out. He could pass forward. He had an athleticism. He could defend. He was just a pleasure to work with. He was an absolute pleasure of a lad. And to see him progress now to a Premier League football, and I'm just so pleased for Adam and his family.
Now one for you, Danny. Loyal Royal has asked, these are the sorts of questions that you guys don't get asked by the local media because for some reason they're not interested. But people like us are really interested in stuff like this. I guess this is the beauty of having you guys on for an hour is we get to sort of get to know you guys as humans as well as football managers and all the questions we can ask about tactics. The question is, can you describe the physical logistics of moving from one club to another in terms of living arrangements, uprooting a family, etc., and particularly for Danny in terms of Braintree to Lincoln and from Paul to Pompey to Wigan? I know we've asked you a lot of questions you've probably found quite tedious about football tonight. This is quite more of a personal question. I think many of us have experienced moves in our life and it can be quite a stressful time, quite aside from a new job. So I'm interested to know how this actually works, Danny.
Yeah, well, obviously my first move would have been from Braintree to Lincoln in terms of the logistics of moving locations. But
I was going to say Concord to Braintree, not much of a leap.
Well, pretty close in terms of locations, Concord to Braintree. But no, for us, I left teaching, which pretty much, unless you commit murder, you never lose your job to go into full-time football manager. Some might say a crazy decision, but no, it's certainly a huge has huge ramifications on your family. There's no doubt about that. We spent the first 2 years living between Essex and Lincoln, and as a family decided that probably we wanted to be together. Luckily, my wife was an international athlete herself, so she's kind of lived high level of sport, so she understands it and understands the commitment required. So we decided to move. We're now living in Lincoln, and Lincoln's a beautiful part of the world if you've never been. But we're quite aware that as and when we might need to move again, and that's the commitment that you make. It's for us, football is everything, and if we're going to commit to something, then it's always it's never half-assed. It's always 100%. So yeah, we anticipate that we might have to move. The children understand that, and while we worry about them, because you want them to have continuity and stability, also if you look at it on the flip side, for them to move and have to build new relationships is good for their life skills and good for their life development. So this is the modern world that we live in, and yeah, we'll roll with the punches as and when needed.
Paul, it'd be great to hear your experience of this, as certainly in your managerial career, from Chesterfield down to Pompey and then up to Wigan. How did that go for you?
Yeah, again, the Chesterfield one was okay. I was commuting. I had a flat over there in Studge. The whole family moved down to Portsmouth. It was quite funny or ironic there when you were thinking, because my son Connor, who's 15 now, I think God, he must have been 9, 10 when we moved to Portsmouth, and he cried all the way on the journey from Liverpool to Portsmouth. All he done was cry. And the most ironic thing, when we left Portsmouth to come to Wigan, he cried all the way back home because he was leaving his new friends down there. And as Danny says, for younger people and younger kids, it can be exciting as well. And you've got to make them believe that, because one of the disappointing things for us now as manager, your family and your support network around you is so important for us all. So, balancing that is really, really important.
I'm not sure I could ever bear to move too far away from George. I have to say, he really is he's my rock, He's my Nicky Cowley, that's for sure. Guys, we've just hit an hour. And normally when we say we'll be an hour, we're normally about an hour and 15 minutes, but it's Thursday night and we're all having a tough time at the moment. So we're going to let you go on time. I honestly cannot thank you enough, not just for giving up your evening to talk football with a couple of nobodies and a lot of people watching online as well, but also just for being so honest as well, and for buying into it, because as you said, we didn't necessarily make it easy for you. So to Paul and to Danny, thank you so much, guys. We really hope to see you back in management soon. We can't wait to see where that might be. Watch this space. Hopefully we'll be able to chat to you again soon.
Pleasure. Thanks.
All the best, guys. All the best, man. Good to see you, mate.
Oh,
hopefully see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye now. Bye-bye.